Hi folks, this is Dragon. Another video on some food preserving, part of the overall picture of sustainable food, preserving foods, carry over the lean seasons and so on. Now what we've got here in front of us is a combination of commercial type foods that we've canned and preserved, and also some of our own preserving. So first off, I'll cover the commercial stuff. One of them being rolled oats. This was canned back in '06, 6 years ago. Oats is not one of those things we can readily grow around here. So we bought quite a lot of it in bulk and canned it. One of the things with oats, and with indeed many commercial and so even some organic food crops, is you've got to keep the weevils and the other little critters that breed in them out of them, so that it doesn't destroy the food. Now, an old timer showed me a way to help prevent that quite a few years ago, and it's been very successful. And this is only one method of preserving food. I'll pop the lid off this one, and I'll show you how well it is. So if we can get a close-up of that. Basically it's an old coffee can or Milo can or something being cleaned out, and those are the rolled oats in there. Okay, as you can see, they're quite good. They're in perfect condition. Now, the old timers showed me what they used to do sometimes was use a candle. This is a tea candle I've used. You can use other different types of candles. The idea being is that you light the candle, drop it in there, then put the lid on. Now, while the candle's burning in there, it's burning up all the oxygen in the air in there, which prevents anything from breathing in there or living in there, producing a high content of carbon dioxide, amongst other things. But it removes the oxygen out of there that a lot of insects rely to live on. So later on I'll have to relight that candle again. Now sometimes you may find that the lids on these cans don't fit very tight, and air will eventually get in. One of the cans I checked recently, and there's nothing wrong with the stuff inside this, but the lid just didn't fit properly, was I used the candle method, and this is rolled oats done in 4 years ago, '08. Put the can on there, lit it, pop the lid on, and be very careful, because while that candle's burning in there, that lid does get very hot, so just be aware of that. You may burn your hands. I put a bead of silicon, or what we call Silastic here in Australia, to help seal it. Now, sure enough, you're not going to find that stuff growing on trees in a long-term situation either. So you can use wax, beeswax, around the lip of the can. Just pour it around while it's hot, and that'll also help seal it. Similarly with this one, this was done in '06. Same method. It's called soup mix. It's a dry soup mix we get here in Australia. Same method, candle. This stuff is very good for making soups and stews. It's got a variety of grains in there, lentils, barley, dried peas and so on, and things like that. Again, not something you're going to find growing on trees, but it's part of our preparation, I suppose you could say, for food supplies. And I'll get on to that in a minute, the reason why we do it. The other one is we've got what we call here in Australia the Vacola bottling system for preserving mainly vegetable and fruit that type of thing. It's a totally different system to what's used in the United States, where you can can meat and stuff like that. With the Fecola system we use here in Australia, it's not recommended. In fact, it's a bit on the dangerous side because it's a whole different system to what they use in the United States. But basically, pack the fruit in there, or vegetable. You can do vegetables too. Make up your own liquid solution, and it's put into a boiler. And once it reaches certain temperatures, and there's a few requirements, pop the lid on. There's usually a clip that goes over there and helps to seal it. There's a rubber seal under that lid. So as it cools down, you sort of get a vacuum in there. Notice that it's filled right up to the top there, so there's very little air in there. This one was done in 1995. An interesting point to note here is that these are preserved apricots, home preserved apricots. You notice the difference in colour to a lot of the commercial stuff you get. The reason for that is a lot of the commercial stuff you get in cans or in dried form, they add preservatives and colouring agents of it to make it look good. It's all about presentation. There's nothing added to that other than the fluid in there, which is basically a sugar-based fluid. There's no preservatives or anything in there like that. Another one that we've done here is sauerkraut. So that was done about 5 years ago. Still in good condition. There's no fungal growth in there. There's no sign of any contamination. Again, a different type of container with a wire locking system on it, and there's a rubber seal under there. Now, going back about 4 or 5 years ago, before mylar bags became readily and economically available in Australia, pretty much the only way we could preserve dried fruit was in these plastic vacuum seal bags. It's pretty much all that was available in Australia. Now these ones here are the ones we've home dried ourselves and vacuum sealed. Thanks to Gel, for remember, they're now more readily available in Australia at an affordable price. The problem with these is, and I mentioned on the previous post, that we had an infestation of cupboard moth due to a contaminated, we think, bulk buy of rice from overseas. Now, cupboard moth maggots will eat through this, eat through it like Swiss cheese. So, as I mentioned in the previous post, we lost quite a few bags of these. But we've dried these. This is dried orange, done 4 years ago. Now this fruit is off our own trees. We've got citrus trees and stone fruit. Clarify that for Americans. That's peaches, apricots, plums, that sort of thing. That's what we call stone fruit in Australia. Now these are quite dry. In the drying process we used a grid powered dehydrator. Some of it was actually dried on trays around our wood heater, going back a few years ago when we had some very cold winters. And all in all, it's been very successful. The problem with these types of bags is that we found, particularly, and this is a good example, we left the orange peel on this, and when we dried them right out to remove all the moisture, you get sharp edges. Same if you do put pastilles and things in there, and it actually punches holes in these bags. So the mylar bags are much stronger and better, and certainly insect resistant to these types of things. But to use this, just open it up, drop it in some water. That's a bit hard to chew. Just rehydrate it and away you go. Same with the plums. We've got blood plums here. There's a tree down there. Bears fruit very heavily in early spring, and we've done that ourselves. Now, as some of you are probably aware, and certainly Australians on the forum are aware, we've had some pretty rough years, probably 2 or 3 years with wet weather and that sort of thing. The tree behind me is what they call a bush lemon. We preserved lemon off that using the drying method, citrus trees and that sort of thing. Now, this is the problem with long-term sustainability of food. When you get 2 or 3 bad seasons, 2 or 3 bad years of seasons, in food you can have a problem with the food supply. These lemons here, this tree is absolutely loaded at the moment, but we get much more rain. This is what's happened in the last 2 or 3 years here. They're going to go mouldy and fall off the tree even before they mature. So long-term food sustainability, it's a problem here. Had we have been at a point where we had to rely heavily on this, we would have been in serious trouble because we just did not have enough preserved at the time, and we have been able to preserve it on an ongoing basis year to year, particularly over the last 2 or 3 years, because very poor crops on the trees, and what was there went mouldy and just fell off. It was just too wet. So that's some things you've really got to look at for long-term food sustainability. Not only how you preserve it, but how much you can preserve to carry you over bad seasons. As I said, we've had 2 or 3 bad years of seasons here. A lot of people around here, and even some survivors I know have got their own veggie gardens in, and they've had very poor cropping over the last 2 or 3 years. So anyway, folks, that's the way we've done it here. It might be look a bit primitive, but Australia being in the backwoods and some of these preserving methods are now available overseas, we had to improvise, and this is what we did, and it's worked quite well, very well in fact. So eventually over time I'll remove the dried fruit from this and put them in mylar bags, and as our cropping improves, we'll also put them into mylar bags as well. So that's pretty well it, folks. That's what we've done. A few ideas. It's a bit different here in Australia, but it's served us well, except for insect damage. As I said, I mentioned on a previous post, we've lost a bit through that. This stuff is fine. It's quite edible. Anyway, that's about it. Thanks very much for watching, folks. Okay, folks, another type of oxygen absorber you can use. Now, there are commercial ones available out there, which is fine if you've got a good supply of them. Again, not something you're going to find growing on trees. There's some other alternative ideas that you may want to have a think about, or even try if you like. One of them being is rust. If we get a close up of this, this is a bit of steel wool I put in this container a few days ago. I put a bit of moisture with it, and as you can see, the rust is starting to form. Now, one of the key ingredients for rust to form on any form of steel is oxygen. Okay, what I did with that, this particular one, was damp it down a bit. You can speed up the process by putting a little bit of salt with it, or dissolve it in a saline solution to speed up the rusting process. Now, when you put it inside the cans, you're going to have to put that in some sort of container, otherwise it's going to contaminate the food inside. But that's another form of oxygen absorber. It takes a little bit longer to work, but that's another alternative. Again, you're not going to find this stuff growing on trees either, but when you're talking about 21st century junkyard supermarket, there's going to be plenty of steel out there laying around in various forms, various shapes and so on. So With a good file, you can do the same thing with iron filings or steel filings. Has the same effect and probably works a lot better than steel wool. So that's another alternative that you may want to think about too. If you wanted to vacuum seal cans like this, or any situation where you want oxygen removed from a preserved food source. So that's another idea. So something to think about. No doubt there are a lot of other ideas out there. These are just a couple I've covered, and see what happens.